Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. We will have provincial election coverage for you coming right up. But first, CBC News has obtained new information about allegations of sexual assault involving a Windsor police officer and a co-worker. The CBC's Jason Vio brings us this exclusive story, and just a warning that this story contains details of sexual assault.
A Windsor police staff sergeant is scheduled to stand trial in July for allegedly sexually assaulting a female co-worker. CBC News has obtained new documents that detail disturbing allegations against Ken Price, but also show that police employees either knew or witnessed these alleged assaults years before Windsor police said it became aware. A trial is set for July, and Price's lawyer says his client absolutely denies any wrongdoing. As this criminal matter makes its way through the courts, the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario is also looking into these allegations. The Windsor Police Service fought to have these records kept confidential. However, after a 4-month process, the tribunal granted CBC News full access to a copy of the allegations with the names of the complainant and witnesses being redacted. We also know that Windsor Police previously said in a news release that it became aware of these allegations in January 2024 and they were immediately addressed. However, the HRTO complaint alleges that many Windsor Police employees, including high-ranking officials, knew about the allegations well before last year, including a February 2023 meeting with an inspector present who's now a superintendent. The police board says it's not commenting as this matter is before the HRTO, and the Windsor Police Service hasn't responded to our questions about what they knew and when. Now, here's what else is in those documents. It started in 2011 with Price allegedly making comments about the complainant's butt. And then the documents show the following year it escalated and allegedly got physical. The allegations include things like Price leaning up against the backside of the complainant with his nose in her hair, saying that she smells good. In 2012, Price allegedly pushed the complainant onto a couch at work and climbed on top of her and started simulating sexual motions. The complainant said in the HRTO complaint, "I tried to kick him off me. I barely could defend myself. I felt paralyzed. I felt like I was in shock. I felt numb, like I wanted to scream, but I could not." During that 2012 incident, the complainant said a staff sergeant and constable witnessed what happened. There were other allegations listed in the HRTO complaint, including an instance when Price allegedly put the complainant's hand on his crotch and tried to kiss her at work. In a separate instance, the complainant said Price grabbed her behind in a violent manner while another officer was present in a workplace hallway. Now, these allegations forced her to stop doing certain parts of her job, causing her, she says in the complaint, to almost quit and eventually taking a stress leave, according to the HRTO complaint. The complainant said it felt so degrading and humiliating, not just because of what he did, but because it was in front of other people. None of these allegations have been proven in court, and a trial date has been set for July 7th. The human rights matter has not been scheduled. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Let's pivot now to provincial politics on the eve of Ontario's snap election. Party leaders are wrapping up their campaigns today, with Doug Ford making another stop in our region. And as Chris Ensing highlights, a controversial moment became a focus of the day.
Ontario PC leader Doug Ford swinging back through Windsor, Essex, just like he did at the start of his election campaign. LIUNA members posing in the background.
2, 1, go!
Practicing a cheer.
1, 2, 3.
Cue the music. Enter Ford.
And we're going to take Windsor West home.
The PC candidate is Tony Francis. Francis didn't take part in any debates over the last month and has not done any interviews with any local outlets during the campaign. It's Chris with CBC News. I got a question for Tony Francis.
Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tony.
Yes, if you could step to the mic here. You did not take part in any of the debates during this campaign. It's been called a disservice to democracy. Why not take part in any of the debates?
Well, hold on. That's an unfair question because I'm the leader of the party. I would rather have our candidates door knocking, hitting 400 or 500 doors than a bunch of people from all 3-4 parties. I've been in this game for a long time. You get all your party members there and you listen to a debate. Do you know what the best debate is? When Tony's out there knocking on doors, 300 to 400 a day he's knocking on, and getting signs, getting support, IDing the vote, and getting people to vote. So that's the answer for Tony. It's an unfair question to pose to a candidate. I'm the one who makes that decision.
Tony, do you want to say anything or do you want the Premier to speak for you?
Go ahead. Next question, please.
We've spent the last hour door knocking in neighborhoods in Windsor West to see if they've heard from local candidates, if they know of Tony Francis.
Never had anybody come through here.
What do you make of people who are running for election but not participating in debates or doing media interviews?
If they're not debating, why should you vote for them, right?
You haven't had a door knock,
No.
but you do have the sign.
Yes.
Can you tell us about Tony Francis?
Don't know him really. You know, I'm just I support Doug Ford, and that's his candidate. So,
What do you make of him not partaking in any of the debates or doing any media interviews?
hey, you know, he's got to make his own decisions. You know, I have no idea what he's doing.
I cannot say that I have. I know that we had a flyer.
What about the idea of skipping debates, not doing media interviews? What do you think as a voter that says?
I don't think that, honestly, I think that a lot of people put stock in a debate, but I personally feel that the candidates are really just saying what they think everybody wants to hear in the first place.
We got one little card, you
Okay.
know, and that was it in our mailbox.
What do you make about him skipping out on those debates and not doing interviews during the campaign cycle?
Well, I think that all the candidates should be there and should be willing to interact, but also let them know what their platform is so we can make an informed choice.
That's where we test their ideas. That's where we see people on their feet, you know, addressing the issues that we care about in our community.
This expert on democratic engagement says debates matter.
It does undermine democracy because we're losing that local sense of connection. And we want to get candidates out knocking on doors, but we also want to have that local discourse. When we have a local debate, we can talk about the issues that impact Windsor.
Polls open at 9 a.m. Chris Hensing, CBC News, Windsor.
We also asked Windsor West NDP incumbent Lisa Gretzky about the PC candidate's lack of participation in debates. Here's what she had to say.
They are taking the people of this region for granted. I think it's very dismissive that they won't show up to these events. As I said, I've done debates, I've done all candidates meetings, I still manage to knock on doors in between. I've taken phone calls with constituents and meetings with constituents. It's possible. What it means is the Conservatives are taking the people here for granted and they think they can pull one over on the people of Windsor West.
Colette Kennedy joins us now for our first look at weather. How is it looking out there, Colette?
Well, I guess in a way this is still very spring-like, or that, you know, preview of an early spring when we're having temperatures above freezing. So the precipitation that's been moving in is mostly in the form of showers. However, there is some mixing and rain mixing with wet snow in the neighborhood, and with a temperature tonight of 2 degrees, but that's actually going to keep falling to 0 by tomorrow morning. And with that, we could get into even a little more mixing. Otherwise, for tomorrow, it's mostly cloudy conditions, some showers or a few wet flurries in there, and that high of 5 degrees, so still well above freezing. We're going to have to say goodbye to some of these milder temperatures, though. I'll have the details coming up.
Okay, thanks so much, Colette. Back to the election now. We are continuing to break down the ridings in our area. Chris Hensing sets the scene now in potentially the most interesting race of the region.
Windsor West is bordered by the Ambassador Golf Club on the west, St. Clair College on the south, and the airport on the east end. It juts out a bit to include Paulette Road at Tecumseh, then Langlois to the river. There's about 100,000 people who can vote in this riding. Traditionally, only a third of voters cast a ballot.
Our education system is crumbling under this Conservative government.
NDP candidate Lisa Gretzky is the incumbent, first elected in 2014. She says keeping the healthcare system publicly funded, publicly delivered, and not for profit is key. Here's how she would address housing affordability.
Ensuring that we bring back real rent control. If you look around our community, everywhere you look, you see wartime homes. Those were built by government to address an affordable housing need, and we could certainly do that again.
The PC candidate is Tony Francis. His campaign site says he has a strong passion for business and community with a Master's of Business Administration and a Bachelor of Engineering and Management. He refused to answer questions when the PC party launched their campaign in Windsor West and did not respond to interview requests for this story.
Why not step up, get involved, and try and do something about it.
Nick Kolaski is with the Green Party. He ran a manufacturing company for 15 years before moving to Windsor. He says he wants to spend more money helping people who are homeless get stable housing and better fund the healthcare system. He takes issue with the previous government's spending policies.
Or the $2.2 billion that he's spent preparing Ontario Place for a foreign-owned spa with a 99-year sweetheart lease. He's just wasting our money.
The cost of living is too high.
Joshua Griffin is with the New Blue Party. His campaign site lists 20 years of experience as an independent minister and pastor. His party says the previous Ford government is going to leave Ontario woke and broke like the Liberals. One of his top priorities?
Reform to ODSP, whereas recipients are not penalized when their spouses and their children who are 18 and over make money.
Matthew Giancola is the Ontario Party candidate. His campaign site saying he's a strong conservative believer, with recent posts on his Facebook page saying he's pro-life and wants to ban gender transition surgeries. His party's campaign site says they want to cut the provincial sales tax by 3%. He was unable to accommodate an interview for the story.
None of the above party is basically a collection point for those who are feeling disenfranchised.
Finally, there's Mark Dewdney, the none of the above direct democracy party. He runs a group that trains people in first aid and moved to Windsor in 2022. He says he believes in a government that gets out of your way.
We need to have the great next medical university here. There's Hammersmith in London, there's Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, there's a few great research entities in Switzerland. Why not Windsor? Windsor's next. It's our time.
The Liberals do not have a candidate on the ballot in Windsor West. They pulled out because of a family emergency.
Jennifer LaGrassa has more now, zeroing in on one riding over.
This is the Windsor-Tecumseh riding. More than 120,000 people live here. In the last election, less than half of those eligible cast a ballot. And for the first time in 6 decades, they turned the area blue. Incumbent Andrew Dowie is running for re-election. He was previously a councillor for the town of Tecumseh. He didn't want to answer questions in an interview, and CBC declined to accept written responses to emailed questions. Top of mind for the candidates who spoke with CBC, healthcare, education, housing, and of course, tariffs.
We need to ensure that we are protecting and fighting for our jobs for the automotive and manufacturing sectors.
It's NDP candidate Gemma Greyhall's second time running. For education, she wants to boost special needs programs. Here's what she said about healthcare.
The next thing is going to be advocating for better health care so people can have family doctors and specialists. I have to also address the hospital because we've been patiently waiting for it for so long. I think we've been talking about it now for almost a decade, and we still don't see any shovels in the ground.
The new hospital is also a priority for Liberal candidate Connor Logan. He recently graduated from the University of Windsor in political science. He says he also cares about housing.
Our government will be cutting taxes that were imposed by previous governments to help save $170,000 on a home.
Green Party candidate Roxanne Tellier moved to Windsor 3 years ago. She says her party wants to allow more 4-plexes and 6-plexes to be built.
We want to figure out some sort of way where people can have a better chance at getting a safe place to live. Housing is a human right.
Kyle Ford is with the Communist Party. He lives with his family in Amherstburg. He says that affordable housing is also top of mind for him.
We'd be proposing things like rent caps, keeping it to 20% of income. We'd be proposing rent controls between tenants.
And Stephen Gifford is with the Ontario Party. He says that the education system should be a key focus.
There's new curriculums like CRT, critical race theory, that have been introduced. But if we do that, that takes away from what I call real education, back to the basics, math, science.
CBC News didn't connect with New Blue Party candidate Sophia Sivo, but her campaign profile says she cares about revamping the healthcare sector. So will Windsor-Tecumseh stay blue? We'll have to see who takes the vote tomorrow. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
A live look outside there. Ooh, a gloomy look outside there. We had a mild day, some wet weather. Tomorrow, a high of 5 degrees. A few more days of mild temperatures before we see a dip. Now, when we come back, we'll tell you about a phone scam that's affected multiple victims. Stay with us. That's coming up after the break. Welcome back. A Quebec woman says she was the victim of a disturbing and sophisticated phone scam. It started with a call pretending to be from her bank, claiming suspicious activity on her account. They then sent someone to her home to pick up her bank cards to resolve it. Nicole Williams reports that she is one among many falling victims to such tactics.
Amanda Kawanda says it took one phone call earlier this month to lose all sense of safety.
Hello? It's telling me, thank you for calling RBC Fraud and Loss Department.
The single mom of two says the caller told her there was some suspicious activity on her account. They had detailed information about her, including her phone number and her address.
He starts listing transactions that were legitimate that I actually made as close as the night before.
The caller then told Kawanda an investigator would need to come collect her cards for a full fraud analysis.
15 minutes later, somebody rings my doorbell.
A man with a bank business card and lanyard.
He was dressed professionally.
Kawanda invites him in and hands over her cards, believing she's just avoided having her money stolen, only to call her bank an hour and a half later and discover the real scam was the one at her door.
And that was such a violation of my home and my sense of safety and I felt scared for weeks.
She says the scammer then withdrew and made purchases worth about $20,000 using her credit and debit cards. And according to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, this particular scam is responsible for about $16 million in losses last year, up 250% from 2021, and there have been reports from across the country.
We have to remember that, our information is so a lot easier accessible than it was in the past.
Cybersecurity experts say fraudsters are only becoming more sophisticated, using tools like AI to take scams offline and in person.
You just need to type a search query in to some database you might have purchased on the dark web, and you get the information that tells you exactly where to go and what to say.
Kawanda has filed a police report and is currently trying to get her money back from the bank. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Toronto.
Rising measles cases here in Canada has health officials urging anyone who isn't vaccinated to do so. More than 90 cases have been confirmed this year, and it's putting the country on pace for the highest numbers in years. Jennifer Yoon reports.
In this southwestern Ontario community, a measles vaccination campaign to convince those who are hesitant. At least 68 people in the area are sick with the highly contagious disease. Officials say most of those ill haven't been vaccinated.
I think the message is getting out there, but not quite as effectively as we would hope.
Surge in cases is linked to community settings like schools and grocery stores, but most are being traced back to two events: a wedding in New Brunswick and a conference in Quebec. Attendees who had contracted measles abroad infected several people. They in turn went home and infected others. That has led to outbreaks in Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba. Separately, there are two other cases in BC, residents returning home from Thailand.
You combine poor vaccination rate with a disease that is highly communicable, like measles. Really, no infection is as infectious.
The disease was declared eradicated in Canada in 1998, but so far this year, 95 people have gotten sick with measles. For comparison, last year there were 147 cases total.
This measles outbreak represents the largest number of measles cases that we've experienced in Ontario since measles was declared eliminated from Canada.
Now there are fears that the disease may re-emerge more permanently.
What I would like to see is that we stop these outbreaks in their tracks so that it doesn't become entrenched in the Canadian context.
There is no cure for measles. The only defense is vaccination. And with case numbers increasing globally and spring break around the corner, Dr. Tam is imploring Canadians to get that protection, especially before traveling. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Stay with us. We will have Colette Kennedy back with us after the break to tell us more about the weather in the days ahead. Stay with us. Colette Kennedy is back with us now for more weather. And Colette, we've been really spoiled lately with these milder temperatures, but it's about to change. So talk us through that.
Yeah, and I don't want to be in too much of a hurry, Katerina, to take this away from folks. So it's not happening tomorrow. Temperatures still actually going to rise to readings above seasonal, but there is some cooler air that's going to be filtering in as we get into the weekend. So just looking at daytime highs from today, that 4 degrees actually from close to midnight through the afternoon. It was more like 3 degrees. And today, some of the milder temperatures were actually a bit further to the east, but we've had some of that wet weather to contend with. Yeah, mostly showers, but there is some cooler air in the vicinity. And so a little bit of mixing with some ice pellets or a little bit of wet snow. And as we'll still have some moisture, although there's not a ton with this system, but as we'll still have some moisture here as the temperature slides overnight and by early tomorrow morning is down around freezing, we could get into more of that mixing in the morning hours with whatever is left, which won't be much, but just be aware of that. As you're heading out in the morning, there could be some slick areas there, whether it's on the sidewalks or actually on the roadways if they're untreated. So here it is, 6 a.m. Still some of that moisture, that temperature falling, and we get some of that coming into southwestern Ontario where it's not just rain showers. A little bit of a return, could have a few little sprinkles into the afternoon. I put them into the forecast, but I think primarily we'll just be dealing with by then what will be cloudy conditions through those afternoon hours. The winds will pick up a little bit too into tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere in the province, it'll be enough to be driving some snow squalls. Not necessarily will they be strong enough to drive them from Lake Michigan across into southwestern Ontario. That rain and snow accumulation, we're talking about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain, and then elsewhere that wet snow, which is actually going to be melting pretty quickly even in other parts of the province because temperatures are still generally going to rise above freezing, but still they are going to be getting into a bit of accumulation, whereas I'm not really anticipating that for us. So this is 2, but this is at 1 a.m. So I'll put this into motion, and there we are, 6 a.m. down to 0. So I just don't want anyone slipping and sliding around anywhere where we have things freezing up a little bit. 5 degrees, though, tomorrow afternoon. Friday, 7. So, again, I'm not too quick to take the spring-like weather away from you, but I did want to mention, just be aware what's happening as we go into the weekend. Saturday, -1, but it's really Saturday night, -10, and Sunday night, that colder air in place.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Colette. And thanks to you all for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Good night.